welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about magic. That's probably wrong, but sure is fun to talk about.
Fun to talk about.
I'm Shawna.
I'm Lesley.
Today we are going to dive into the first of 5 deep dives into the new Challenger decks that are coming out in April.
Is there 5?
I think there's 5. Maybe
thought
there's
there
only
was
4.
four. I think
Could be
there's
only
4.
4.
We were just talking about Commander,
pretty
and the
excited.
decks coming out. There's so many decks coming out this year. We are so excited because we get to give you some breakdowns coming up of all the decks. And so, yes, this is our first breakdown of the Challenger decks.
So these Challenger decks, what exactly is a Challenger deck?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, the Challenger deck is a deck that Wizards of the Coast, it's a pre-made deck that Wizards of the Coast has released, and they are based on the top 8 or top 4 decks that have been kind of being played in all of the Pro Tour and whatever tournaments that have been kind of running this kind of past 6 months, I would say.
Yeah.
The great thing about the Challenger decks is that they have really good cards in them. They are meant for people who want to just up their game a little bit. So if you're a new player or a seasoned player and just want to get into one of those more competitive decks, these are a good option for you because they will give you the cards that you need right off the bat without having to try and kind of compile it, and you can play them right out of the box and win with them. So they are standard, and they will rotate out, so that's the downfall of them, I suppose, is that eventually they will rotate out, but these ones are being released in April, which is great because they will last until rotation in October, because rotation happens once a year in October. So they'll still have valuable cards that will stay in the set afterwards, so you can tweak them after that to kind of keep them good. I remember the white weenie ones I had. Still a really good deck.
Still a really good deck.
Maybe I should play that for Pioneer. Oh, there's so many options. That was a good one.
These come with some really, really good cards, guys, so it's a really good value for your money. I think they're about $35, $40 each.
Yeah. It'll depend on where you live.
Yes, and the cards in them at the moment are being played in the Pro Tour, so these are great cards.
Yeah. Of course, every deck will be a little bit different because some of the decks or the cards in some of the decks. So, for example, there's a Fires of Invention deck, which, of course, we saw lots of play in the Worlds just this past weekend. And so those ones will probably be more expensive than the other Challenger decks. All of them will be different prices, and it'll depend on the market and how sought after they are, and they'll go up and down in value. But great cards, good thing to get into if you're wanting to kind of say, hey, I'm a good player, but I can't seem to get that deck right. Get a Challenger deck.
Yes, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So the first one we're going to cover is one of my favorite style of decks right now. I'm playing a Simic Flash deck myself right now. And so this one is it's called Flash of Ferocity, and it is a Simic Flash deck. So we're going to go into how many cards of each type and what the mana costs are and stuff, and what we would do to improve the deck, if anything. And just like we've done in our previous.
For the most part, there's probably not going to be a lot of tweaks for these decks. They're good as they are. But our goal for this, if you stick with us, is to give you some idea of what's in the deck, how you should play it properly, so that when and if you do decide to buy this deck, you know what you're doing with it.
Yes.
So
Lesley, can you tell us about the mana curve on this deck?
Yes, it actually has a fairly decent, if not amazing, mana curve. There are 24 lands, which is a decent amount of land, especially for this. It's a multicolored, or it's a 2-color deck, so 24 is not unreasonable. Shawna and I tend to go with 23, so you could try and tweak it out, but I would play with it first.
Yeah.
Make sure you know
some of these cards have 2 pips of each color on them, so it's a little bit tricky with this deck.
So there's also 10 at 1 mana cost, 24 at 2 mana cost, only 6 at 3 mana cost, and only 11 at 4 mana cost. So super low mana curve. Everything is meant to be not played really fast. It's not an aggressive deck, but it's meant that you can have your mana out when you need to have it, and keep those cards and play them when you need to. So, but we'll get to that.
Yes.
What about colors?
So colors, this is a mostly blue deck because there are so many spells in here that are, we'll explain as we go along, but there are 11 cards that are green and 36 that are blue, and just a few, there's only 4 that are multicolored. So that's them. And like we said, there's 24 lands. There are 23 instances, 23, and 28 creature cards. So it is a lot about spells.
And I don't know if they count things like Brazen Borrower as an instant or as a creature. So there are some that are both, and they don't take that into account in this little chart that we have from the Wizards website.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Okay.
lots of instant and sorceries. So what are we starting with?
We're starting with the creatures, and the very first creature is this one.
Actually, before we go into like all of the creatures and all that kind of stuff, give us an idea of what you're supposed to do with this deck. That way, when we talk about all the spells, we can talk about how they fit within the deck. So what does it do?
This deck is meant to not play on your turn.
Yeah.
Basically, the only thing you do on your turn is lay a land. That's all you do. Everything else you're playing pretty much on the other person's turn, so that you can interfere with their turn or do something on their end step that they're not expecting, and so they can't respond to. So yeah, it is all about being aggressive on their turn.
And I would say that's probably one of the hardest things to kind of like switch your mindset. So when you first learn Magic, you're just kind of, you learn my main phase, you finally get your three parts of your combat figured out, and then I can play on my second main phase, right, and then maybe playing on other people's end steps, you start kind of getting into that. Well, this is like, okay, I'm ready, and so now this deck is all on their turn.
Yes.
So it's a little bit harder.
You're countering their cards that they're playing, and then you're dropping that Nightpack Ambusher on their end step, and suddenly they have a big bunch of wolves.
But we believe in you. We believe you can do it.
You
we
can do
think that you have the ability to pick up this deck and do it. It's a little challenging, but you're up for the challenge.
Yes.
So the first creature that we're talking about is Brazen Borrower. This is the one that I was talking about that's an instant or sorcery. There's only one in this deck. So its instant is return target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. That costs 1 and a blue. If you're playing this deck right, you will use that portion of that card. There's very little reason to just cast the Brazen Borrower just for the brazen, unless they're totally running you over. Then you might want to play the 3/1 flash flying. No, wait, it can only block creatures with flying. So I mean, you're gonna unsummon something of theirs, and then you're going to put it on an adventure and bring it back for 3.
Yeah. And then the really strong card in this deck in particular is the Nightpack Ambusher. So these cards have flash. So what that means is you can play these cards as if they were instances. So you can play this Nightpack Ambusher as a sudden little blocker that you're throwing in there. All of a sudden their 2/2 is being blocked by a 4/4. They had no idea it was going to get blocked. So like that kind of thing. So that's the kind of thing you need to do with this Ambusher. And it also, if you're not playing cards on your turn, at the end of your turn, it makes more wolves that have +1/+1. So you definitely, when he's out there, you don't want to be playing anything on your turn because you want to make sure that it creates wolves as you're going. So there's 4 of them in the deck, and it's for 2 and a green. 2 greens, sorry. So that's one of those ones that have 2 pips. Same with the Brazen Borrower
has 2 blue pips, so that's why we don't really think you should get rid of the land.
Nope.
So Wavebreaker Hippocamp is 2 and a blue. It's a little 2/2 for 3, and you're like, well, why would you do a 2/2 for 3? But whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, you get to draw a card. So it gives you that card draw and rewards you for playing on their turn, and reminds you, you should probably play on someone else's turn. Now this one you will have to play on your turn because it does not have flash.
Yeah, so plan that ahead of time. The Wildborn Preserver, this is another really strong card that people, I think, underestimate because it's a little 2/2 for 2, a 1 and a green, but it has flash. and it has reach. So all those flyers that are a problem, this guy has reach. And yeah, only 2/2 at the moment, but every time you play another creature comes in, like your wolves, and you've got some mana there, you can pay extra and put counters on this guy. So suddenly you have a 7/7 reach, which tends to get in the way of their silly little flyers. So
call my flyers silly little flyers.
and again, you're doing that on their turn, so suddenly they think they can swing in for a 2/2, and you're flashing in a wolf, and you're adding some extra counters to this guy, and suddenly you're blocking their little flyers with this guy.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
So this is and there's 4 of those.
There's 4 of those
There's
in there
also
too.
4 Brineborn Cutthroats. This is a fairly important card to this deck as well. Again, we got a flash creature. You're playing it on your opponent's turn, and whenever you cast a spell during your opponent's turn, you get to put a 1/1 counter on Brineborn Cutthroat. Again, another great reminder, play on your opponent's turn. Like you have to. This deck will not work if you don't play on your opponent's turn.
Then the next one we have is Frilled Mystic, which is for 2 green and 2 blue. So again, you need that mana out there. It is a 3/2 flash creature that when it enters the battlefield, you may counter target spell. So this is a counter with legs, basically. So it's you're going to keep them from playing their Teferi or whatever.
Super
plus
annoying,
you're going to get
but
a
great
creature
great
out.
little spell, right?
It's awesome.
Counter spell.
There are 4 of those.
4 of
too,
those.
Sorry.
And we also have 4 Spectral Sailors. 1 card. It's got flash. It's 1 for 1/1, which doesn't seem like why would you do this? But this card is in every blue deck. Why? Because you can pay for and draw a card at any time. It doesn't count as casting a spell. You can do it on your turn if you want to draw an extra card on your turn. But maybe you need that land. You need some more land so you can play stuff on their turn. But it's flash, so you can bring it in on their turn and card draw.
For sure.
It's great.
So that's our creatures. And then we're getting into the spells on this deck.
Yeah.
So lots of counter spells, drawing cards too. So the first one we have is Thassa's Intervention, which is for X and 2 blue. And it is an instant where you can choose one. You can look at the top X cards of your library, put up to 2 of them into your hand and the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. Or you can counter target spell unless its controller pays twice X. So it's a great little counter, and you can mess them up.
I love that has options, right?
It does.
You can dig through your deck to get the spell that you want, or you can counter their spells.
Yeah.
Opt, there's 4 opts. It's actually solid card. It's very well known opt, but for 1 you can scry 1 and then draw a card. You get to look and then you get to draw.
The next one we have are 4 copies of Quench, which is a pretty common counter spell as well. For 1 and a blue, and you counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. So keep that in mind when you're using this one. But it does counter pretty much anything. So, and a lot of these guys are playing cards that cost like 5, 6 mana. So quite often they have to spend their whole Nisa, their whole mana to play their Nisa, and you're going to quench it.
And they're wanting to play their 4 mana cost on their turn 4, and turn 4 is such a key pivotal. Turn 4 and 5 are like those key ones. So if you can save your quench or your counter spells until you're on their turn for that, then don't start countering their first and second
No, you use your counter spells for something that's really going to make changes in the game, like those Nisas, not their own little Spectral Sailors or stuff like that.
This deck will take more thought to play. You'll have to think about. You don't want to take too long, so let's talk about that.
Sure.
Because it's hard as a new player to kind of know all the possibilities and know all the decks that are out there, and there will be times that you just don't know what they're going to be playing, and so you have to make the best decision that you can, and you don't want to be, I don't want to call it annoying, but you can get called if you're in an official tournament on slow play if you're taking too long during your turns. You also don't win if you go to 3 games and you don't finish your last game. So that in mind, it's okay to also think about what you're doing. So take some time. You have a counter spell in hand, or you want to make them think you have a counter spell in hand. If you take a few minutes before after they cast each spell to just kind of think, do I want to do anything about that? Then there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. with this deck, you need to be, because you're countering their spells, you need to be thinking about what could they possibly be playing. So if it's a black and blue deck and it's turn 2, chances are they have a thought erasure in their hands, right? So they're going to want to see your hand. That's usually what the blue and black guys are doing on turn 2.
And you don't want them to see your hand.
You don't want them to see your hand, so it's a perfect time to play that.
Mono green turn 4.
What?
Mono green turn 4.
Mono green turn 4. You're probably going to see that big elf guy. Or turn 4 questing beast. Questing beast. Sorry.
Or something like that.
Yes. So think about some of those options that that person might be playing, and think about, do I need to counter a questing beast? Yeah, you do.
Or turn 3 mono green. So you can't know everything. The more you play against decks, the more you'll know. But anyway, we digress.
Yes.
Back to the cards. That's okay. This is important stuff for you. So Sinister Sabotage, there's 2 of those. Same thing. It's another counter spell, counter target spell. You do get to surveil with this one, which is great. It's 1 and it's got 2 pips of blue that you have to use. But great little spell.
Yep. And then we have an unsummon for 2, which I find I tend to use a bit more than the what's the little fairy guy? What is his name? Brazen Borrower. I tend to use unsummon more because it costs less. So then I can put it back in their hand, and then when they play it again, I have a counter usually. So I'm a little bit happier with the unsummon than I am with the Brazen Borrower.
Well, I think that the Brazen Borrower is nice because it's 2 cards in one,
yeah.
and that's why people like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. So land.
Yeah.
Castle Vantress.
Yes.
There's 2 Castle Vantresses. I think that's enough. Castle Vantress enters the battlefield tapped unless you control an island. So just think about that when you're playing that. You want to play your island first because you want Castle Vantress to come in not tapped. Now, there are times that it's the only one you have. That's okay. Play it. Think about the timing and when you want to have your mana open, because you need to be able to counter stuff when you need to counter stuff. And if your land is tapped, that 1 blue land is tapped, you can't do anything. But this one offers a scry, which is great.
Yes, so the reason this is in here and the reason it is a really, really strong card in this is as the games go on, which it will with this deck, the game is going to go on, you're going to want to know what cards you have coming up, and being able to scry 2 and move some of those lands that you don't need down to the bottom is extremely important, so that you can get to your counters, or that you can get to that Night Pack Ambusher who's going to finish the game for you. So it is actually, I didn't really think about the value of this card until I was playing more with it, and I was like, wow, this is so important to have in there later.
Also, like backing up,
Sorry.
with the spells, I forgot to mention, you'll just, I mean, we did talk about it a little bit, but they're all instants. So if you do want to tweak this deck, if you do, just remember that you want instants, not sorceries. There's a reason for not having sorceries here. So Fabled Passage is the next one.
Yeah.
Sacrifice Fabled Passage to search your library for a basic land card. You can search for that card that you need. It comes in untapped if you have enough land on the battlefield. So yeah.
It really fixes that mana that you need, that second
It's a mana
blue
fixing.
or that second green. Temple of Mystery, same idea. It is a mana fixing. It comes in tapped, but you get to scry.
Love
and
scries.
It's a green or blue. So that's a really, really great land to play on your first turn if you're stuck. Then you can see what's coming up.
And it's got 2 of the Temple of Mystery. 3 Thornwood Falls. That one, when it comes, it enters tapped, but you gain a life. It taps for either or. I guess if we're looking at those 2, I would probably say, if you can, put the money into getting a couple more Temple of Mysteries, taking out the Thornwood Falls. The life gain doesn't really matter, but they're cheaper cards, which is why they're in here. So if they put 4 Temple of Mysteries in the deck, it would be worth way too much, and nobody would buy it. So
yeah, and Thornwood Falls, if you could replace it with the Shockland that's blue and green, which is called can't remember, but
say the stuff without knowing.
I know, right?
You're the one with the photographic memory.
The blue and green. Oh
I don't
gosh.
know.
Anyways, it is
Breeding Pool.
Breeding Pool. Yes, Breeding Pool. It's really expensive though. It's $25 a card.
Yeah. So it's not in here, but you can put it in there. Put a couple of those in there.
There are also 8 forests and 8 islands in this deck as well.
So the sideboard,
Yeah.
equally important. You're taking this to a tournament likely and get the opportunity to sideboard in between. So what does that mean for those that don't play with sideboards or don't really know that? I remember when I first started playing, I never really cared about a sideboard. I didn't put any thought into it, and the more I played, the more it became important to me to have a sideboard that had some thought. So why sideboard? Why do you build a sideboard?
You build a sideboard to help you deal with those decks that you come across. So your deck might be good in general, but if you added some specific cards, which are those cards in your sideboard, it would be even better to play when you're playing against a certain kind of deck. So we'll talk about each.
Do you remember?
Thing, I think.
Well, anybody that's watched our series. So if those of you who watched our videos before, we often say that's very situational.
These are the things.
These are the situational
Yeah.
that deal with those situations.
Yes.
Because there's gonna be a situation.
Yes.
So,
for example, this one here, Shifting Ceratops. There's 3 of them in the sideboard of this deck. If you were playing against a blue deck, so another Simic Flash deck or the Azorius Control deck, this is a great card to bring in because this card has protection from blue. So they can't block it, they can't remove it, they can't Teferi it, they can't do anything with their blue stuff to this guy. And he's getting through, he's for 2 and 2 green. He is a 5/4 that you can give trample to. You can give reach to. He is really, really effective. So you bring him in and take out probably some of your little flyers, maybe a counter or 2, and put him in there instead, and you'll be running over them in no time, actually. So, yeah, that's what he's for.
So Disdainful Stroke is 2 mana cost counterspell. It's just another. There's 2 of them in your sideboard, so you would put this in your deck. After you've played a game where you're like, there's a lot of things that they have that are higher mana cost that I am having trouble dealing with, so I need to put more counter spells in that will deal with those creatures. So
You bring that one in. If you're dealing with someone that has lots of Teferis or lots of Planeswalkers in general,
or burn.
Burn, yes. Anything with lots of spells. You want to bring in these negates here for 1 and a blue. It's an instant that can counter target non-creature spell. So that you put that in instead and away you go.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. So if we're talking meta, it's about knowing your meta, knowing what's being played. The god cards like Heliod and those, they come in, are there creature enchantments?
They're creature enchantments, but
Okay,
they
never mind,
count.
You can't know because they're creature. They're creature type.
Oh, right, never mind.
I was just thinking because they come in as enchantments, but no, they do come in.
They still have creature on their
creature
type.
enchantments, never
So
mind.
no, you can't do them. But
So
you can do
that's-
those Planeswalkers.
Yes, you sure can. So that's important to know. It's non-creature, so as long as it doesn't have creature in the type, you can negate it.
Right.
Nice card.
Then, if you're against some little red deck wins like we saw on the weekend, a great card against them is Aether Gust. It's for 1 and a blue. It's there's 3 of them. It's choose target spell or permanent that's red or green. Its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So it's not a permanent solution, but it definitely sets them back for a minute. Gets
Sets
the
them
Embercleave
back
out of the
more
way.
than the unsummon.
Yes. Yes, because it goes to the top of their deck. Usually is where they put Torbrand instead. But he's coming
I'm
back.
almost thinking that those would be better in your main board. But unsummon is cheaper,
Yes.
so it just depends on what you're doing, right?
And it's only red or green.
Right.
So that's the other
That's why it's situational.
It's situational.
Yeah. So Mystical Dispute for 2 and a blue. This is another. This spell costs 2 less to cast.
Yeah.
If you cast it against a blue spell, but it's another counter spell, unless the person pays more, so makes their spells cost a little bit more. I love the artwork there. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty.
And this is another uncommon that's getting to be expensive because everyone's using it because it's such a strong card.
Yeah.
Especially against a blue deck, which is when you would bring this in, or a Teferi, something like that, because then you only need 1 mana to play this and counter the Teferi. So, yeah. Threnody Singer. It's for 1 and a blue. It's a 1/3 flash flying creature. When it enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent controls gets -X, -0 till end of turn, where X is your devotion to blue. So if you are coming against some big guys and you want to get rid of them, this is a great way to do that, because then your creature's dealing lots of damage and theirs not so much. So this is there's 3 of them in here to bring in for your sideboard, especially if you're dealing with lots of flyers. Maybe this is one that you can use for that.
Sometimes you just need more creatures as well, right? And it's
Yeah.
a 1/3, so it's a nice little, it's a good decent blocker as well. So if they're pinging in with a bunch of little 1/1s, then your 1/3 can potentially block them. I'm thinking the Cavalcade deck or something like that.
Yeah.
It'll help against that.
Some of that stuff.
Keep you from being run over.
Yeah, so that's the sideboard. Tweaks and additions that I was thinking of that I've been kind of messing with. I have fewer Spectral Sailors in there, and I have Omen of the Sea instead. Partially because of that scry thing. Omen of the Sea lets you flash it in, and you can scry 2 and then draw a card. So, plus then later on you can use it to scry beforehand. So if you don't have Castle Mantras out, it's a nice thing to have there for that. It counts towards your blue devotion if you're working with that at all. But I kind of like it in mine. I only have, I took two of the little flyers out and put 2 of the Omen of the Seas in, and it's been working really well. So more Sinister Sabotage. I really like that one. I have 4 in my deck, so that's an idea.
It's got the Surveil, right?
Yeah.
Thrashing Brontodon,
Yes,
because
why
you
do we
can
have
kill.
Thrashing Brontodon, Lesley?
Yeah. Oh well. Enchantments, man.
Enchantments.
Or artifacts.
And artifacts. What's our most favorite artifact right now in Red Deck Wins?
Amber Cleave. Bye bye.
Believe in the Cleave. No. No.
Hashtag believe in the cleave.
Exactly. So, and actually I even did that today. Like first I blocked with my Thrashing Brontodon. He put his Embercleave on that creature, thinking he was going to get through with the double strike of the Embercleave, but he forgot that I had mana to pay to sacrifice my Brontodon and destroyed the Embercleave before damage was done, so he didn't actually
Do any damage.
and his creature died on top of that. So yeah, it was fun.
So yeah, I mean, as these decks go, as we said, they are based on the pro decks. They're a mashup of kind of all the Simic Flash decks. There's no one deck that's the best, and that's why there's a little bit of variation between. So you can look at some other Simic Flash decks and see if there's anything in there that you want to kind of bring in or pull out. But the main thing we wanted to kind of get across was play on their turn. It's really important to do that with this deck. You should probably never be playing on your turn except for that little frilled guy, and you could probably take him out and put something out. But he does have the card draw when you play on their turn, so that's nice. You could also put the Fairy Vandal. It has flash as well. It is a little 1/2 flyer with flash.
Yep.
But there's not a well, if you're doing card draw, well, actually,
You're card drawing on their turn.
if you're card drawing on their turn with the Spectral Sailor and the Frilled thing,
Yeah.
then you get your Fairy
cards,
Vandal would go up too. So that's you might want to play with that one. It's probably not the best option, but
It doesn't have as much card draw as some of those card draw decks have, but it does have some.
it does have some.
So, yeah,
Nothing like a flyer that gets bigger.
that's right.
Yeah.
It's always a good thing. So thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our videos. And you can also listen to our podcast.
Hi, podcast people.
Everywhere you can get podcasts from, pretty much. And you can catch up with us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. We are on there, and we'll tweet back. So Leslie's really good at that. She pays more attention than I do. She's very awesome. So, but thank you very much for joining us, and have lots of fun with your cards and try out these decks when they come out. And in the meantime,
Tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Bye, guys.
Bye.